Welcome to Wines and Wonders with Kirsten Fox. True stories with a side of wine. Looking for inspiration for your life and your wine glass? This is your podcast.
Hello and welcome back to Wines and Wonders with Kirsten Fox, a somm, and Dannielle Bryan, a shaman. So we are your pathway to not only learning more about your life and ways to cope and great tools to use to be better humans, but also what to put in your glass and what you might be curious about in regards to drinking your wine. So welcome back, Dannielle.
Thanks, Kirsten. Good to be here.
All right. Well, do you want to present what we're going to be talking about today?
Yes.
On our podcast.
We are talking about the benefits of nature, being outside, being in nature. How does that affect us? Why do we hear all the time, go outside, take a walk, get out in nature? What is that actually doing for us? So this is our topic of the day. And I will launch in by setting us up to talk a little bit about, of course, the energy body.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Do tell.
Yes. So, nature, our energy body. We are energetic beings. We are multidimensional, energetic beings. So, what does that mean? We are made up of these different layers of ourselves, and we are vibrational beings. And we all know this. So to make this more relative to everyday life, we know what it feels like to be in a happy up mood. We know what it feels like to be in a down sad mood. We know what it feels like to be frustrated and angry. We know what it feels like to feel calm and peaceful.
Yes.
All right. So all of those different things that I just named, if we were measuring our vibration based on those moods, we would see a different measurement. Our bodies would be at a higher vibration or a lower vibration. The vibration may look chaotic and frenetic, or it may look very smooth if we were looking at it like on a chart, for instance, okay? So when we go out into nature, what naturally happens, there's a lot going on when we take a walk out in a park. Or if we're deep in the woods, there's variance of what is nature, really, as well. But what happens is there's a different frequency, and everything has its own aura of frequency. It has its own vibration. We talk about it in this path as being your unique frequency signature. It's like a thumbprint. Okay, so big old growth trees have their own unique frequency signature. A meadow with wildflowers has its own unique signature frequency.
So just a second here. So I know I'm a human.
Uh-huh.
I'm alive.
Yeah.
I have heat.
Since we're here together.
Yeah. That would be bad.
Right. Well, it'd be the wonders part of the wonders. But anyway, yeah.
But when you talk about aura, I've seen pictures of or representations of what it means to have an aura, and you can kind of see this radiating, kind of thing coming off someone, right?
The color spectrum,
yes.
Oftentimes in depiction when we look at
yes,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I'm seeing that, but I'm also a warm-blooded human that has, so I can kind of get my head around if you're telling me a lizard also has an aura that, because it's alive and it's pumping blood, and then you're talking about a big tree. I'm like getting a little further away from understanding.
It
is
alive.
But
so it's got a life force energy. Okay. So back in when people are coming into a skill set of learning how to read energy or see energy, oftentimes the easiest place to start is with a plant. Because if you actually look at a plant and you do a soft gaze, okay, you don't want to look at them like with your eyes wide open and you're doing this intense stare, because what happens if you're doing that, if you're really trying to see, you're actually activating different areas of using your eyes. You're actually staring too much into this object.
So this is like a 3D, when it's some of those 3D posters where you have to kind of like
right.
soften.
Yeah, soften your gaze. You're kind of just looking at it.
Okay.
And if you do this with the plant, you will begin to see this golden light right around the edges. And that is the life force energy of the plant. That's the aura of the plant, if you will. It's the vibration coming off the plant.
Any plant?
Any plant. When I was a kid, this is how I started.
Whoa.
I didn't really know what I was doing, except that I was hanging out and I would look at these plants and I'd be like, wow, there's like a golden line or outline around all the leaves.
And there was no drugs involved.
No, I was very too young for that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So it's actually a place where in a lot of trainings they'll have you start there if you're developing your ability to see energy, because it's the easiest one to see.
No way.
Yeah. It's the easiest one to see.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now you've got me over the, a tree has aura now. Okay. Maybe even more than a lizard.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so,
or definitely a different vibration than a lizard.
A different vibration. Okay. Yeah, definitely a different vibration.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, there's, these are these realms where things are so cliche, right? In the whole like hippie, dippy, woo-woo facet of how we look at some of this stuff is like, go out and hug a tree. Like, oh, they're just a tree hugger, right? We have this whole thing around all that, right? The earthy crunchies. But I'm telling you what, there's like real value to it.
Yeah, which we're going to be talking about.
Yeah. Not that you all have to go out and hug a tree. That's not what we're saying. However, you can just be walking through the forest and that will be great.
Yes.
But your body, what happens is, so you have these living beings. They're their own sentient living beings. And they have their own life force energy. And they will emit a certain vibration or frequency. And when we go out in nature, our energy body actually recognizes that.
Oh.
Just like if somebody comes in a room who's super aggravated and grumpy, don't they feel prickly to you?
Oh.
You can feel it.
Yeah.
You don't even have to ask what's going on.
Right.
You feel what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you could see it, it would probably look really sharp and spiky, their energy that's coming off their body, as opposed to the person who walks in after they just had a massage. And you're like, wow.
Wow, right? I want some of that.
You can feel it. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, if you were trained to be able to see their energy, they would probably have a brighter glow than the person who's really angry. They would actually have a denser glow. That it would be more muted because it's a lower vibratory state.
Lower.
Yeah. So we go out into nature, and our energy body recognizes the energy body, if you will, of the tree or the forest or the meadow of wildflowers or what have you. And immediately upon this recognition, our body begins to respond physiologically and it calms down. And along with calming down, what it actually does is expand. It expands our energy body, where if we were stressed and tired and grumpy, it's kind of drab and tight against our body, closer to our physical body, these different layers of our energy body. And when we go out into nature, our energy body actually expands. It says, this is a great place for me to just stretch out and get as much of this as I can. And the same thing, not just trees and flowers, but I was just at the beach a couple weeks ago, and the same thing happened just being on the beach, having literally my toes in the sand and listening to the waves. And, ocean and ocean water, it produces a different ionic effect. It changes the ions in the air, right? We can smell the ocean. We can sense it. Our skin feels different. There's a different charge in the air. And so, again, what is happening is our energy body is attuning to this frequency. It's saying, here's a place where I can expand and relax. And our energy body actually physiologically, our bodies calm down because our energy body is expanding and we're not so caught up into our fight or flight or in our mental capacity of thinking so much. Our stress levels reduce and really without having to think any of this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a response to what is happening that nature does so well.
Wow. Okay. For those of you who are shaking your head, and I'm going to bring in a little of the left-brained side of this whole discussion, because there have been many, many scientific studies that reflect this.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, you're telling us it's the energy body and that, but there are also actual scientists who probably find more and more that they believe in
Mm-hmm.
energy bodies because of their research.
Right.
And I found a woman at Sharp Mesa Vista Hospital. She is this is such an interesting job description. I wish I was born today, because the job descriptions, I mean, my gosh, she is a certified therapeutic recreational specialist.
Nice.
Like, wow.
Yeah. That wasn't on my list when I was looking through
No.
college majors.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, that's just amazing.
Yeah.
But she said, and I'm going to quote her, being outdoors in nature can be healing and beneficial for the body and mind. Whether at the beach, forest, or in a neighborhood park, nature often offers a calming effect. And when we combine nature with physical activity, it can fight depression and anxiety. And she has found in terms of her research for this hospital, and it happens to be Sharps out of San Diego. So I recognize it as my hometown. So I was like, oh, Sharp. But she said that these are the 5 things that she has, through all of her research and what she's seen in her professional life, in terms of improving your health and well-being. Lowers your blood pressure and reduces stress. And this is time spent walking or simply looking at trees.
Mm-hmm.
It literally can lower your stress-related hormones of cortisol and adrenaline. So, boom, right there. And we're going to go into these in a minute, a little deeper. But second, it improves your mood. She's found that researchers find that nature simply makes us happier.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety, depression, anger are notably decreased in multiple studies after spending time outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
Improves focus. Okay, now anybody out there that's trying to, figure out the next best or whatever you're trying to focus on, studies show that both adults and children who have difficulties focusing are better able to concentrate after being in nature. So that whole thing, that gut level that you go, I just need to get outside for a minute, is really, it's telling you to do something that really is proves scientifically you can increase your focus. Fourthly, it helps us heal quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Illness, surgery, painfully frightening experiences, and that can increase stress and slow your healing as you're going through the stress.
Decrease stress. Right?
Oh, decrease.
Yeah.
Well, so what she is saying is increase if you are ill or if you have surgery.
Correct. That will increase your
It's
stress.
increasing pain and frightening situations because you're looking at your stitches or whatever you're looking at, and that increases stress and slows healing.
Right.
However, they found that research is proving that just getting outside, sitting in the fresh air, getting someone to wheel you outside of the hospital, whatever, there are fewer painkillers used in these studies, fewer complications with the healing, and people are experiencing shorter hospital stays. So boom, right there, 4. And the 5th one, for those of any of us who may be over 50, and looking at aging and feeling pulled muscles when you were asleep, how does that happen? So according to a study in the Journal of Aging and Health, adults over 70, now I can already tell you this for 50 as well, who spend time outdoors, they experience fewer sleep difficulties, they complain less about daily aches and pains, and they enjoyed longer-term improved mobility and the ability to just do daily activities.
Mm-hmm.
So those are 5 top overreaching. There are other ones that we'll talk about, but I mean, it is the scientific proof backs up what you are telling us our energy bodies are going through when we're out. They talk about it in a different way,
Right.
but we are getting something from nature that is only available out there. Or at least I'm seeing it as only available. Tell me what you think about all these studies. Is that a surprise to you, or where are you on that?
Not a surprise. I mean, before you even read that, which I did not see until you read that, we named some of those same exact things, right? So that's what I know to be true from my learned experience, my lived experience, and through my study in this path, and recognizing the importance that so many indigenous cultures and ancient cultures recognized the sentient wisdom that exists in nature. So in the particular path that I practice and study, we refer to Mother Earth, to Earth, as Pachamama, and we recognize that everything that exists on Earth is its own wise sentient being, meaning that it has its own wisdom. It has its own life force. It's as if it's another living being. Now, in the world of looking at animals, we get that. We see that they're their own living beings.
Right.
They go out, some mate for life, some don't. They have babies, they raise their young, they blah, blah, blah. Right? We get that. But we don't often look at a rock formation and see it as its own sentient, wise being. Right. We don't look necessarily at trees and see them as their own wise sentient beings. We get that they're alive. Right. We get that trees are alive, and then they can get disease, and then they can die. And bark beetle, right? In our area, you can drive and see it and recognize, like, wow, yeah, it used to be alive, and now it's not.
Right.
So we can understand that, but we don't necessarily think about it from the place of this being a being. We don't respect it in that same way that these indigenous cultures do, where they talk about their ability to commune with the mountain spirits, to commune with the rivers and the lakes and the oceans, to actually dialogue. That's what I'm talking about here. So it's really different. That's not our normal lens.
No, it's not
at all. But it is in many of these traditions. It is not abnormal to say, oh, you're having a really hard time, you're depressed, you're stressed out, you might need to go sit up on the mountain and commune with the Apus. Like, that's normal. That's not normal for us. We're
learning.
That. We're learning, yeah.
It's getting, I think it's definitely getting more normal, but and I will say, like, in terms of rock formations, let's just say that. I was just at the Grand Canyon with my daughter.
Right.
And at one point we just sat, it was sunset, it was beautiful, gorgeous day. And we just sat on the ground with I was terrified. I was like, are you sure you're okay? You're not feeling like at all slippery, right? Because I mean, if we had I can take care of myself, but my daughter's sitting next to me, our legs are dangling over, a 100-foot fall. And we just sat there and watched the sun and watched the birds, and you could feel an energetic from this extremely big space and beautiful layering of the rock and the birds that were catching the drafts off the cliffs and just going super quickly up high in the air and then coming down, and then shadows on the cliffs that you thought were two birds but was one. And so I feel, and I've felt spiritual about a location before in my life, Santa Fe, New Mexico. I visited there. I feel something there, and I know other people do too.
Yeah.
And so I do understand a little bit about what you're talking about other things that aren't humans or animals or plants having some kind of pulse or something about them that is alive.
Yeah.
So that makes sense to me.
And there's from a cognitive linear, I want this to make sense to my personality and my ego perspective, we could rack our heads and we can debate and we can go through all kinds of discussion around it. And some people will be, will adopt it very easily and be like, oh yeah, I know
Totally.
that. I was at the Grand Canyon. I felt something too.
Right. Uh-huh.
And some people are going to be like, it's pretty.
Yeah, it's
but,
pretty.
And so there's this, what's going on though on a physiological level. This is why you can read these studies. They can measure that your stress reduces. They can measure that you actually heal faster. And it's because our energy bodies, now I've talked about this in past episodes, but for today's episode, I'm going to go through it again. We have our physical body. We all get that. Physical body, yep. Next layer is the etheric body. Next layer, emotional body. Next layer, mental body. Next layer, spirit body. Next layer is that vast matrix that makes up our whole beingness, that aspect of ourselves that we cannot see with our eyes, but we know absolutely exists. Because, again, going back to the example that we can feel it when somebody's in a bad mood.
Yes, we can.
That's not our shoulder feeling it. Okay?
Right.
That's not our physical body feeling it.
Right.
That is, what is that? That is your intuitive, multidimensional body. It's your energy body. It's those subtle energy bodies that have their own sensory aspects to it. If you could see it with your eyes, they're light filaments that move. They're always moving around us. And those light filaments are like whiskers on a cat. They can sense and feel what is going on.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, just came in.
Oh, that's great.
So it's that part of us that is sensing and feeling the person who's walking in who's angry, the person who's walking in that is blissed out. It's when, and I've used this example before as well, that when we walk into a room where two people have been arguing, we don't need to hear the fight to know that an argument was going on. That is our subtle energy body reading the vibration in the room. Everything has a vibration. And nature is a cacophony of different vibrations that are all in harmony. They're harmonious. We don't look at a tree and say, God, that thing is horrible. I have such a bad feeling when I'm near that tree. Have you ever had that?
Right,
No.
right.
Not even noxious weeds. They're beautiful.
Right.
Right? We're like, wow, that's so pretty. I don't want any of that near my yard.
River.
We don't look at it.
No,
unless humans got involved and desecrated and polluted it. In which case, what happens when you look at that river, Kirsten? You go, that's sad. Exactly. You don't say that thing's ugly and gives me a bad feeling. You feel sad for the river.
Yeah, you do.
So everything has its own unique vibration, frequency, and it lives in harmony. And our bodies recognize that, whether we cognitively understand it or not.
So let's take one of these other ones, that, like another study that showed that inflammation can be we're talking about a specific thing in the human body, autoimmune conditions, inflammatory bowel disease, depression. These are cancer. These are what in the world? These are big. This isn't, I'm feeling a little down or I'm having a little hard time concentrating.
Right.
Can you help me understand what energetically is going on? I mean, I understand that my energy body, my little light lumens or whatever, feel like, okay, I go out, I go into nature, and I'm allowed to get bigger, you said?
Yeah.
So by getting my little light lumens bigger, what is that? I don't understand how that's going to help I've got ulcerative colitis. It's an inflammatory condition. How is that going to help?
What is going on, and I'm going to speak from my perspective as a practitioner and a trained shamanic practitioner, not as a doctor.
Okay, well, yes. Okay.
When when we look at any of these conditions that you just named,
Cancer, depression, inflammatory bowel disease, autoimmune disorders.
Right. What that would read like from an energetic standpoint, if I was working with a client and they came in and they said, hey, I've got this autoimmune condition and I have all this inflammation all the time, I would be looking at the state of their vibratory health. I would be saying, okay, from an energetic standpoint, since you're coming to see an energetic healing practitioner, this is what we're working on. And I'm going to look at your vibratory state. Now, your vibratory state is going to be in a denser vibratory state because that is not optimal health. That is not a high vibrational state.
So
can we agree on that?
Yes, yes. Are the light lumens fatter and
they're dimmer?
They're dimmer. Okay.
They're not as vibrant.
Okay. All right.
So they're dimmer. They have they're heavier.
Okay.
They have a denser vibratory state versus a higher vibratory state where it would be much brighter and it would be moving faster. Or if you were to think about vibration, be moving faster. Higher vibration.
Higher vibration. Okay.
And to help with the inflammatory response, what we want to do is increase your vibration, and we want to decrease your state of stress, cortisol, and fight or flight. Because anytime that the body is fighting against something like that, you are most likely caught in a fight or flight pattern.
Okay. Yes.
So your amygdala is firing.
Okay.
You're caught in fight or flight.
Try to help your body's trying to help itself.
It's trying to help itself because the body always wants to come into a state of homeostasis and harmony.
It wants that.
So
it's going to work.
That is its natural state.
Okay.
Anything other than that, it is trying to correct itself.
Okay.
So inflammatory bowel disease is the body actually trying to correct itself. It's not the body trying to be abusive to itself.
So it's not like it just got out of control and now I've got to deal. It's like it's trying to help me.
It's trying to help me.
Yes, yes.
There's something else going on, and this is the result of that something else. This is why we're always going, okay, what's beyond that? What's beyond that? What's beyond that?
Versus taking the pill that just covers up whatever's going on. It's like, what's actually causing it?
What's actually causing it?
Okay.
Because the body's having an inflammatory response to try to correct something else.
Yes, right.
So from an energetic standpoint, we're saying, okay, we need to go in, we need to reset your fight or flight. We need to take you out of this pattern. We need to reduce your cortisol levels. We need to bring you back to a state of peace and calm and homeostasis, which is going to raise your vibration, which in turn is going to help the body to be more efficient in its healing process. So when you go out in nature, because your energy body recognizes the harmony and the frequency of nature, it automatically begins to reduce your stress, to reset your fight or flight, and it's raising your vibration. And from that place, when your vibration comes into a higher vibratory state, now the body can more efficiently and effectively come into homeostasis by correcting what is out of alignment. The body naturally knows how to heal itself. And when we give it the space and time and the right conditions to do so, it will. But when we continue to overload it with toxins and unhealthy choices and food and emotional toxicity, and we stay in stress, and then we are not giving it the time to come into its own efficient cycles of naturally being able to heal itself. Nature will naturally do that for us because our energy body recognizes the high vibratory state and it will entrain. This is a law of physics, I believe. Maybe not. Maybe I shouldn't even say that. But it's a law. It's the entrainment law. I don't know where it falls into, but it's the one that says, you're going to entrain with the higher vibratory state. You're going to come into alignment there. And so we will entrain when we give ourselves that opportunity to do that with the higher frequency of nature, which then has all those physiological, wonderful effects on our body.
All right, well, let's take a quick break here and let you guys, my mind has been blown, as it always is, but I try to keep my head from spinning during these podcasts because it's all there innately. I feel like I already know this, but then when you're describing it, it makes so much sense. It's so different than we've all been trained to talk. Most of us have been trained to think. And so, okay, let's take a break. We'll give you a little moment to let your brain relax.
Look at a tree.
Look at a tree. Yeah, look at a plant. Right, perfect.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. Have you ever had a friend call you in tears as she explains what she's going through, and you get off the phone and you feel like you just have to do something? Well, there is a company called Uplift Gift that is here for all of us to use when we get those kinds of calls. They have all sorts of different comforting items that they package up in beautiful wrapping and send to your friend, along with a handwritten card from you in the box, so that she feels your love from far away. Uplift Gift, when words aren't enough.
Welcome back to Wines and Wonders, stories with a side of wine.
All right, welcome back. Hope you got a little moment to appreciate a plant. And we're back. So, okay, thank you for all this great, very clear perspective on what is going on and why is nature helping us. Now, there's something that I read that I wanted to read back to you and ask your opinion on, because it's a little bit, you've said something like this before.
Yeah.
So I think we might have been in one of the first podcasts we did together. So it talks about, you know that when your brain is feeling seems to be sputtering to a halt, researchers call that mental fatigue. Okay, this is you've talked about this. One thing that can help get your mind back into gear is exposing it to restorative environments, which research has found generally means the great outdoors. But one study found that people's mental energy bounced back even when they just looked at pictures of nature. Pictures of city scenes had no such effect. Studies have found that natural beauty can elicit feelings of awe, which is one of the surest ways to experience a mental boost, whether it's live or in a photo. So can you, I mean, that's just sounds so far out there.
Here's what I love, Kirsten. This is what I love about you, is that you can read that from your analytical, I need to understand this perspective, and look at me with that look you have on your face right now, which is going, right.
I know there are other people out there with that.
Right.
Really? Yeah, sure.
But what is so great is that I can take that, what you just read, and I can say, well, of course it does. Why do you have these coffee table art books of nature? And you flip it open and you look at it and you go, oh, God, that is so beautiful. And your whole body just relaxes when you look at it.
Well, I guess I've always just thought it's beautiful. I mean, like I've gone into art galleries and let's not say necessarily art galleries, but more like photographic art.
Yeah.
I've gone into those, and I mean, I love the pictures of the bear with the mama bear with the baby, and then I love the picture over here with the little white bunny rabbit in the snow, and I love looking at those. But I've always thought it was a pleasure in my brain because they're so cute, and they're so beautiful in terms of, oh, look at the expanse of the river there with the mountains in the background. It's more been, it's like my eyes are happy and therefore my brain is happy.
Exactly.
That's what I've thought it was.
That's what it is.
But
okay. I know. So I'm just giving you
I know, I love
the
this.
standpoint of like, we can walk into a photo gallery. We have several here in
Yeah,
Park City,
many,
right? And we
many,
go in
yes,
and we love
yes.
them, and you can stand and just be
Oh.
like, wow. Especially those pictures of southern Utah and the Narrows in Arizona and the Red Rock
colors
Canyons, right? All that stuff. And something happens, and it's so automatic that it's happening that you're not even noticing that it's happening.
Uh-huh.
This thing that you just read is breaking it down and saying we can actually research this, people, and we can measure that it's going on. But we know it's going on because when we stand in this gallery or we look at the beautiful book,
Yeah.
that thing is happening. And here's what's going on.
Uh-huh.
You're looking at a scene in nature, and most of us have made a lived experience of being in nature where we've had the feeling. We've made a lived experience in it. We've
Okay.
been in the forest. You've been looking at the Grand Canyon with your
Okay.
daughter. You've made this lived experience where you're there, you're feeling it, it's real time, it's happening, it's not a photograph.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And then all these things that we talked about before the break, all those physiological responses are happening as you're being here in nature. Now you go and you look at a picture, and the body is drawing all these connections. This is what is so amazing about the brain, frankly, is that when we make a lived experience with something, when we're feeling the lived experience of something, the brain is taking note and laying down neural pathways and synapses and saying, oh yeah, we like that. That's good. That's good. That's good. We like that.
we like
that.
that. We're going to
okay?
do
Yeah,
this. We're going to lay this down.
Yeah, we're going to lay this down.
Okay.
And now when that pathway gets triggered or fired or tapped or awoken up, you will have the same emotional and physiological response to it. Just like looking at a picture of some delicious food will make your mouth water. It's the same thing. It triggers a response. Your mouth starts to, you're like, man, I'm hungry, right?
Right.
And your stomach starts to growl, and you might not have been thinking about eating prior to that. But now you're hungry.
Right.
I just saw a picture of it, and now you're hungry.
I had to stop watching Food Network because I would go in the kitchen and I'd be like, oh
me
my
too.
gosh.
Yeah. Great British Baking Show. I was like, if I'm going to binge watch that, make sure I do not have sweets
Anything
in the house.
in the
Right? So it's that.
Okay.
So you're looking at this image. Now you've made a lived experience somewhere in your life where you had those physiological, energetic responses, and now just seeing it is firing that neural pathway, and it's creating the same response. And it's the same thing with fake plants. This is interesting because I got the whole photo thing. What I didn't get, I just recently decorated the new wellness center.
That yes, you
up.
Are opening just gorgeous.
And so I hired a decorator to help me with this project, and I have one room that has no natural light in it, and we were talking about wanting to have plants and such, and she says to me, well, we could get some really nice high-end fake greenery. And I was like, I don't know if I'm into the fake greenery. Like, that's not really my gig. I think I'd rather have none. And she says to me, no, there are studies that show that people will have the same emotional feeling in response to fake greenery that they do to real plants. And now I get the whole real plant thing, right? So I want my whole place filled with all these beautiful, live, real plants. And I was like, really? And so I started to look at it, and I found nice, high-end fake greenery. And I'll tell you what, even though I know it, I walk in and I'll still be like, God, that is just such a beautiful tree. Because I already have a neural pathway that's laid down that says that's a beautiful tree.
And if it's done well and it's not in some kind of a imitative kind of like, hokey, that's a like, fake tree trying to look like a real tree.
Yes, correct. Then your body you'll respond to it in the same way. And
because of the neural pathway. So you're just doing what you are used to doing.
Exactly. And so, because I thought, when she was telling me this, I was like, yeah, but it's fake. So, and she's like, no, I'm telling you, even if you know it's fake and it's still beautiful, it will still elicit that same response.
Dang.
And it's because we've made the lived experience with the real deal. And we have the neural pathway, so it still kicks in that firing, that hardwired firing in the brain, which then signals everything else. That says, oh my God, that is so beautiful. You're right. And
calming
me. And crazy.
So that's why photos of the
nature,
coffee
whatever.
table
Yeah.
books,
Yeah.
why they were.
Yeah.
I that is so beautiful. And, it makes me sad for people who can't. I mean, we live in Park City, Utah.
Mhm.
We're outside in
Yeah.
the nature. I mean, we've got
All year
moose
long,
warnings
right? Yeah.
on next door and
Mhm.
mountain lion warnings
Mhm.
and which
That
are
might create a little bit of a fight or flight response, but nonetheless. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But we're outside a lot, and it makes me think of someone who's living in an urban environment who might be relatively far away from anything actually natural.
Mm-hmm.
But it calls to mind then why cities spend money
Mhm.
on. I mean, I would be in Chicago on sales trips previously, and in the spring they had tulips everywhere
Yeah.
around downtown
Yep.
in the Loop,
Yep.
downtown Chicago. And I remember assessing, because I would be there at the right time, and I remember assessing how much money they were spending
Mhm.
on tulips
Mhm.
and the maintenance of the
Mhm.
tulips and the planting of the
Mhm.
tulips and all these different things. And then, but I loved looking. I mean, it was so beautiful to me. But I thought, well, I'm from Utah. I don't see a city scene like
Mhm.
this. It must be that. But now what you're saying is that is bringing plant life
Mhm.
into an urban setting that,
Right.
yes, it's controlled, but it still has an effect
It still
on
has
people.
an effect. And it's why there was a big movement. I can't remember the year, but there was a big, big movement with green spaces in cities because they began to study how it reduced stress in people who lived
Oh.
in cities. And then, there was this big boom of bringing in people who could create these landscapes and these garden spaces throughout the cities, not just big, Central Park in New York is
Right.
like, how big is Central Park? It's big, right?
Huge,
And so
yes.
they kept that, knowing that was a benefit to the people to have green space in
Yeah.
such a concrete, area. But rooftop gardens and
Mhm.
there was this guy, I watched this documentary, and his big thing was bringing into cityscapes and office buildings, particularly walls, plant walls, garden walls.
I've
right?
I've read about
Yeah.
those.
And so you could walk into an industrial building and there's a garden wall, and it's all the greenery, and it's bringing that element to the people that don't naturally get it. Like you and I walk out our door and it's
Right.
nature, but
Right.
that is not the case
Mhm.
everywhere. And so they realized and recognized the effects that it had on one's emotional well-being and spiritual mental health to have nature, more nature. In New York, maybe it's in Brooklyn, there's what they call the High Line.
Oh,
Yes, the High, and it's an old
Yes.
train track
yes.
that was elevated.
Yes.
And it's no longer being used. And somebody came in with this idea, and this High Line is like walking through a park, and they have park benches, and they have all these trees, and they do this in Tokyo as well, in like cities over in Asia,
Mhm.
where it's so compact,
Yes.
and it's just so much city building, cars, noise, tight,
people together.
right? And they create these buildings where they will actually have like greenhouses and forests and trees and parks within the buildings, because there's no
Whoa.
space outside left, and very unfortunately it's pollution and all that. So they build them in these buildings, and you can
Wow.
go into these building parks to get your nature fix. And so there's a lot behind this. There's a lot of study that recognizes that we humans do well when we're in this kind of frequency, when we're in this
Yes,
kind of
we
energy.
do.
Yeah.
Well, to conclude that, unless we find something more to talk about, but I loved this, an opening to a 2008 paper that was describing the promise of so-called nature therapy. So 2008, okay? And it's quote, imagine a therapy that had no known side effects, was readily available, and could improve your cognitive functioning at zero cost. I mean, that is what we are talking about.
Yeah.
Everyone can find a photo
Mm-hmm.
in somewhere.
Yeah.
You can find go to a drugstore if you're in a big city and find the photos of the postcards.
Postcards, right.
Postcards.
Yeah.
You're going to be able to
Mhm.
find, at a minimum, find photos of nature.
Mhm.
And then certainly as parents, getting your children out to experience nature so they start
Mhm.
to lay those synapses down
Mhm.
and those memories down
Mhm.
that then help them feel happier
Mhm.
later is great. And for us, as we get older and less mobile and things, keeping those plants in the
Mhm.
house, keeping those energetic fields around us that are
Mhm.
going to help us come into more homeostasis,
Mhm.
like you're talking
Yeah.
about, calmer and higher vibration.
Yeah. There's a therapy called
Mhm.
rewilding, and it's about being outside and getting your feet on the ground.
Mm.
When my son was 5, 4, 5, 6, I don't know, somewhere in that age range, we were outside, and me being his mom, I was talking to him about Pachamama and
Okay.
the connection with Pachamama and
Apus and
yeah,
yes.
all those things.
Uh-huh.
So we were outside and he was barefoot. He was standing on the ground, and we were just doing this exercise of connecting and grounding and centering with the earth. And he said, "Mom," he goes, "my feet are tingling as I feel the energy coming into my body." And I was like, right. And like, kids get it, I have a friend who has a little boy and super in tune, cute little thing. And one day he said to his mom, he was frustrated. He was playing with his Legos or whatever it was. He got frustrated. It wasn't working out. And he looks at his mom and he goes, "I think it's time we need to get outside and go for a walk. I need some air." And he's like 6, right? We joke about how he'll be teaching the shaman classes soon.
Yes.
And so she goes, "Okay." And so they go out for a walk and they get to a park, and he goes, "This is the time when I'm going to take my shoes off and put my feet on the ground." And
Oh my God.
and she goes, "Okay." And so it's so great. I mean,
Oh.
they feel it, they know it, they get it.
Mhm.
And we, depending on all kinds of external situations, we either never had the opportunity for that to be okay, or we grew out of it because, we got busy being teenagers and not just going and putting our feet on the ground
Right.
and such
Yeah.
things. But anyway, it's natural, it's innate, and a lot of times it's just the remembering that that's just available.
The remembering.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I have a type of wine that you may think is new, but that is actually very, very, very old in terms of thousands of years old. And I'm going to talk about it after our break. So it's become very popular, and I'm looking forward to explaining a little bit about the history, but also about what's going on now and why we're seeing it again. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned to hear what type of wine Kirsten will pair with this story right after this.
Do you have a friend who's going through a challenging time in her life? And are you looking for a way to show your support that's more than just a phone call? Uplift Gift is a company that provides beautifully wrapped gift items inside a gift box, along with your handwritten message of love in a card sent directly to your friend. It's quick and it's easy, and something will be there very soon to support her at her time of need. Uplift Gift, when words aren't enough.
Thanks for staying tuned to Wines and Wonders. Now back to Kirsten.
Welcome back to Wines and Wonders with a psalm and a shaman. So as I sit awed most of the time during the show, as Dannielle's giving me all this great input of things that are relatively new to me, I get to at least talk about wine at the end of this show for the time being. So this wine is a wine that is called pétillant naturel. Now, that is horrible French. I am so sorry for anyone that actually speaks French. Pétillant naturel. What we say in the United States is generally pet nat. And this is a type of wine that is made purposefully and bottled before the fermentation is finished. So let's go back 2,000 years. They don't know anything about yeast, about what they're doing. Why are there bubbles that come out of a liquor or an apple? Let's just say they're like it is rotting, and if you ever ate it, it would taste a bit like alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
If you had juice of a plant, and you didn't drink it fast enough, it would start to ferment, right? And you'd see bubbles,
Mm-hmm.
and it would have a little tiny bit of alcoholic taste on your tongue when you would drink it. And so what would happen is if they were trying to make an alcoholic beverage, they would think sometimes that the yeast were finished eating the sugar now they didn't know this was going on,
Mm-hmm.
right? But they're like, okay, it stopped bubbling.
Mm-hmm.
So we think it's finished. And they would put it in whatever they could put it in terms of a container. Now this had to happen in a place that they could seal the containers pretty well. It doesn't work if the container can't be sealed well, because then the re-fermentation allows the bubbles to escape through let's just say if they were using a rag. They used to take some kind of a clay device, and they would just throw a rag, some kind of material on the top of it. And that kept things out like bugs, but it would still allow fermentation, additional carbon dioxide to get out through the material. So they had to have a sealed container. But what would happen is when they did have a sealed container, let's say they were using pine resin,
Mm-hmm.
in addition to a solid thing that was then anchoring, really sealing it. Then that fermentation, that carbon dioxide would get stuck in the vat with the liquid, right? And so they would reopen it. It would have some kind of a pop of some kind, and they would have a bubbly liquid. And this is really the origination of champagne as well.
Mm-hmm.
Pétillant naturel is a rebirth of the idea of bottling and capping a wine before all of the yeast all the sugar has been eaten by the yeast. So they will let's just say it normally takes a 10-day process to ferment to dryness. That's what we're familiar with in terms of our table wine. It's dry. It doesn't have any sugar left in it. All the yeast have been removed. The dead yeast cells have been removed, and we're left with wine with no sugar in it. Well, if it usually takes 10 days to get to that point, you are going to, let's just say you're going to start bottling at 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's still yeast in there. There's still sugar in there. And you decide you're going to put it into a bottle, and you're going to put, what is usually done is they use beer cap type of devices
Mm-hmm.
instead of a cork.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes they'll use an actual, almost like a champagne cork. But because that has the cage that keeps it tight
Mm-hmm.
on the bottle with the pressure that builds inside. A beer cap is much better at doing that, or it's easier to do it that way. But then what happens is that next 5 days of fermentation happens inside that little bottle, and you get this fuzzy wine. And so if you think about the difference in fuzz and bubbles
Mm-hmm.
that you get from a beer versus what you get from a sparkling wine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you are talking about a beer, it's foam. It will stay on the top.
Right.
It is foamy.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, towards the end of your beer, you may even still have foam around the rim of your glass.
Right.
You certainly expect to have lots of little fuzzy bubbles on your mouth, and they're tiny. They're little tiny bubbles, and it's just constantly refreshing on your palate. The beer is. Now, then you look at sparkling wine, which is done in it's a different style, but it's bigger. They are actually bigger bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
You will pour the sparkling wine, and there will be an initial head that comes up of bubbles, but that almost immediately decreases.
Yeah.
You're not expecting to have foam on the top of your bubbles, your sparkling wine, for very long. And then inside the bubbles itself, inside the liquid, if you think about sparkling wine, you're going to be actually able to see the little bubbles going to the top, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes in a line.
Yeah.
To the top. Well, if you try to do that with a beer, you're talking about literally like ridiculous number of, you can't even focus. They're not even big enough to focus on, right? So pet nat wines are at the intersection of beer and sparkling wine experience. So what they do is they've capped that. It creates what kind of is a beer-like experience with a wine taste. It has the foam. It has, and it even has some of the cloudiness. For example, you know how a Miller Lite beer or a Miller beer is going to be, it's going to be see-through after it bubbles.
Right.
But if you have a Hefeweizen,
Yes.
it's got the yeast still in it, that cloudiness,
Yeah.
and it's also got almost even a yeasty or sour component to it in the beer. And so that, if you take that and you add that to wine, you're going to have the same thing. You're going to have a wine that you can't really see through. It's got yeasty components in it, and it looks way more like a beer, but it tastes ultimately like a wine. And it is funky, it's surprising, and I'm pairing our getting outside and enjoying the natural fermentation, the natural experience of what happens in nature. This is a nod back to what used to happen because they didn't know what was happening with wine. They didn't know what fermentation was. And this is really one of the most natural products that's on the market right now and it's called naturel. It's called naturel, the French, whatever. Pétillant, which means bubbles, naturel, natural bubbles. And so that is what I'm pairing to our discussion today of getting outside and appreciating nature to increase our vibration, which of course a little bit of pet nat would also do.
It would increase your vibration.
Yeah. Don't go too far, but it'll increase that vibration until you get into and another thing that's going wrong. No, but that's two pet nats into it.
Pet, yeah.
So that's the pairing for the day. Do you have any questions about pet nat?
I don't.
My friend.
That's fascinating.
It is fascinating.
Yeah.
And we even have some here in Utah.
Wow.
So ask at the liquor store. They come in and they get sold out because there are not a lot of them right now.
Right.
And they're not super expensive, but they're a very, come on, what are the guys that wear the beards and the girls? I mean, what is it's not yuppies. Who are the people now that are really into come on, what's the word?
I don't know. Not the millennial.
It's
a millennial, but
what's
even younger than the millennial?
Yes, what are the words for those?
The Gen.
Gen X, Gen Zers.
Gen Zers.
Yeah, it's really popular with the people on the edge that are looking for the newest, best, most small herbal farm to make their boiled down, small batch, this and that. It's all very popular with them. So when the pet nats come in,
the TikTokers,
the TikTokers who are old enough to drink. Anyway, gosh, I can't believe I couldn't find that word. But you guys are all yelling it at the podcast right now.
So you win.
Yeah, you win because we
go have a glass of pet nat.
All right. So happy to have you guys here and sticking with us through all the iterations of what goes on here in Prague City between Dannielle and me on this podcast. So stay tuned for what we'll be discovering and talking about next.
We look forward to sharing a new story and wine with you next time. Thanks for tuning in to Wines and Wonders.